Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Certainly plenty to discuss this morning. We've got Zed Jelani on to talk about the right way to combat misinformation. We have Matt Brunig on. It's his first time on the show, talking about a new study revealing new dynamics within inequality. We also have Dr. Abdul El-Sayed on to dig into the treatments the president is receiving and what it may indicate about how sick he is. And that is, in fact, where we want to start this morning. It was, just an absolute catastrophe over the weekend, frankly.
It was a total nightmare, and we're going to have a lot to say about it over the weekend. I guess let's just try and break it down chronologically since we all spoke. So Friday morning, we knew that the president tested positive for coronavirus. That day, we were getting some details from the White House. They said he was experiencing mild symptoms.
First he was asymptomatic, then he was mild, then he was moderate, then he was going to Walter Reed.
Next thing you know, I think it was Friday night, all of a sudden, he's going Friday afternoon, they're like, oh, he's going to Walter Reed. And that's very highly concerning. A lot of people around the president basically saying there's no way the man is going to let himself go to the hospital unless he's really sick because he doesn't want to project, fear or chaos into the system. Then what happened is Saturday, as we received a briefing, the first briefing that we had from the president's doctors, Dr. Conley, and that is really where everything just went off the rails. Dr. Conley was highly evasive whenever he was taking questions about the president's health. Then there was some troubling statements, to say the least, from the White House. But let's just give, in case you missed it, this is what that first briefing with Dr. Conley was like whenever they're asking critical questions about the president and the state of his health. Let's take a listen.
Has he ever been on supplemental oxygen?
Right now, he is not on oxygen.
I know you keep saying
That's
right now, but should we read into the fact that he had been previously?
Yesterday and today, he was not on oxygen.
So he has not been on it during his COVID treatment?
He's not on oxygen right now.
It's like, Doc, you think this first rodeo for a lot of these journalists? Like, you think we can't spot it a million miles away?
Oh, my God.
Clearly, the president's been on supplemental oxygen. And I'll say this later on my radar. I think it's fine. He's an old man. And you know what? If he's sick, all anybody wants is for him to get better. You don't have to lie. Why are you being lying and evasive? Everybody in America could see that and be like, oh, man, this, clearly something's sick. Now they're trying not to tell us what's going on. It's just been like a constant stream of misinformation.
Yeah.
And then immediately after the doctor came out, the doctor was largely like trying to paint a rosy picture.
Obviously,
right. So. And then immediately afterwards, who we later find out is Mark Meadows gives us a background quote, which means, a White House official saying we are not yet on a path to clear recovery. And I'm like, what's the alternative? Death? Full recovery is alive.
Saying that his vitals had been concerning, that the next 48 hours had been critical. And this was immediately after the doctor's like, he's doing great. Nothing to worry about. It's amazing. It's all going fantastically. Yeah. It's just like, it is mind-blowing. And to think that people aren't going to listen to that statement and know immediately that, in fact, he had been on supplemental oxygen, which, of course, we did then come to find out that on Friday, while we were getting reports, what was coming out of the White House was first asymptomatic, mild symptoms, moderate symptoms. We come to find out after the fact, fever, oxygen level had dropped to, what are considered critical levels, that he had to have supplemental oxygen. All of these details come out after the fact. And you're absolutely right. By having this completely, just lies spread out in terms of the public face and trying to project strength while all these leaks are meanwhile trickling out about how dire the situation actually is, you make everything worse. You make people assume the absolute worst about what's going on. Look, we don't need to know every single detail, but what you tell us needs to actually be accurate. So all of this was completely insane, and especially, though, that dynamic of immediately after the Dr. Conley comes out and is like, it's all great, Mark Meadows, chief of staff, coming out and telling foolers, no, by the way, things are not great, things are really bad. Now, and look, the reality is we don't actually know the seriousness of the president's situation right now. We have no clear visibility. The doctors are saying he may be on track to be released from Walter Reed back to the White House today. Maybe he will be, maybe he won't be. Does that indicate that he's actually out of the woods? We just have no idea at this point.
No, exactly. And actually, I mean, he's been plugged for, now he's had an experimental cocktail of antibiotics, I believe. He's
Antibodies.
Had 2 doses of remdesivir and some doses of steroids. So, I mean, basically from what we've seen Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's on CNN, kind of discussing this. He basically said, from all indications, this actually could be quite a severe case. At the very least, they're throwing the kitchen sink at him. All the treatment indicates that the doctors are treating this as a serious case. At the same time, maybe they're treating it seriously because he's the president of the United States. Again, we have simply no idea. But Dr. Gupta broke it down yesterday on CNN. Let's take a listen to what he said.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I would say a couple things. One is that I think the president is sicker than the doctors are letting on. And again, I hate to say it that way, but they've made that clear all throughout these last several days. They keep telegraphing things that are highly concerning, but then painting this rosy picture. The president is on 3 different medications. His oxygen levels have dropped. We know that there are findings on his imaging studies that are not normal. So these are all things that would certainly lead one to believe that he is sicker than, doing fine, maybe going to go home tomorrow. The going home tomorrow sort of comment, that really struck me, as it did you, Fred. For 2 reasons. One is that he is on a medication that is supposed to be administered in the hospital, this remdesivir, and it's a 5-day course. He's the president. There is a White House medical unit, so could it be possible that they could set up something to administer this IV medication at the White House? Perhaps. I mean, would it be advisable? I don't think anybody would advise that, but, look, these are unusual times.
So he believes that the president is sicker than doctors are letting on, which may well be the case. We certainly don't know that for sure. But what all the experts who have treated this disease and have great knowledge of how it has been treated say is, number one, this would not be the normal course for someone who has mild or moderate symptoms, right? If you're talking about a regular person who goes in the hospital suffering from this, especially the steroids that they gave him in particular are associated with severe cases of COVID. I saw one doctor quoted as saying, this would indicate someone who's headed towards the ICU rather than back home. However, as you said, look, he's the president of the United States. Maybe they are throwing at the kitchen sink at him just because he is so important. And another thing I saw speculated is actually this happens a lot with prominent people who come in and think they know better than the doctors and basically boss them around and say, I want this and I want that. They call it VIP syndrome. And then doctors basically give them what they want. We're going to have Dr. Abdul El Sayed on in the show later to ask him exactly about these drugs and the routine that the president is receiving. But look, the bottom line is everything that they've done so far has only sowed concern, has only sowed sort of chaos in terms of, the public's perception of what is going on. And let's also remember, it's not just the president who is sick. Many members of the top echelons of our government have been infected because of the absolutely reckless way in which this administration has approached national safety, but their own personal safety and health and well-being. It looks more and more like that Amy Coney Barrett confirmation event where everyone gathered outside and there was an indoor component, everyone hugging, no one wearing masks, everyone super close. A lot of people who were at that event ended up being infected. We can throw up here on the screen what we know so far in terms of people who have been infected with coronavirus in this administration. You've got senators, you've got the president of Notre Dame, you've got Bill Stepien, he's the campaign manager, you've got Kellyanne Conway, Chris Christie, who, by the way, is in the hospital right now. He has asthma, in addition to other, potentially pre-existing conditions that could contribute to a high risk level here. So far you've got 3 senators, Republican senators who we know have been infected with COVID, 2 of them on the Judiciary Committee, by the way. And so, I mean, it's a grotesque irony that the event that they were using to launch this aggressive push to get Amy Coney Barrett in may be the thing that throws the confirmation hearings off track. It's very much in doubt now. Now, look, if I had to bet, I'd say McConnell figures out some way to push this through because it's like his, political mission in life to pack the courts as much as he possibly can. But this event has very much put her confirmation, the timeline, very much in jeopardy.
So it's thrown a little bit of wrench in there. And the Senate is going to, we'll talk about this later, but there have been output until October 19th, basically until they come back. But but the hearings themselves are going to continue, and a lot of the senators can conduct this all remotely. The only thing you can't do remotely is vote. And so, of course, though, that vote is currently scheduled for something like October 29th. They largely think that they're going to have the votes and they're going to be fine for that. So I wouldn't bet against a confirmation right now. But broadly, the amount of chaos injected into the system, all of this, it just didn't have to be this way. It just, and that's actually what really bothers me about this entire thing. It never had to be chaotic. You could just get, I mean, we covered Boris Johnson's thing here. It was fine. He was sick. And everybody, and the doctors came out and said, yeah, he's sick. And he's in the hospital. And he went in the hospital. And even though he looked like he's much sicker than the president, went all the way to the ICU and all that, he came out, he said, hey, National Health Service, they saved my life. He's got a great approval rating right now. And the same thing with Trump. It's like so many of these antics trying to pressure the doctors into not telling the truth, or at least trying to spin the information, has actually injected more of the idea that he's not taking this seriously.
Right.
And that is the political death knell. Go look at the polls. 70% of Americans say the president has not taken coronavirus seriously since day one. If he loses, I think that's because of that.
Yeah.
More than any other event. And here he is. He continues to do the same thing.
Yeah, and to make matters even worse, and I really found this to be unconscionable. He releases this video, I'm going to surprise my supporters. And the next thing we know, there he is in an SUV being driven by Secret Service agents who he is putting at risk so he can go out and wave to his admirers who had gathered outside of Walter Reed. Okay, so it looks bad enough to start with, but then what we come to learn is these aren't just ordinary SUVs. These things are hermetically sealed to be able to protect against chemical weapons attacks or something like that. So anything that is circulating in that car is like super circulating in that car beyond even the normal level of risk. And look, I certainly hope that those Secret Service agents are safe and fine and do not get infected. But to put the people who are there to protect you at risk for like this vanity stunt, to me, is just absolutely outrageous and frankly unforgivable.
Well, it's like, why? Like, was it worth it? Like the way, and I get it. Look, a lot of people on the right are like, look, he's doing great. He wants to show it. Great. You know, walk out on a balcony or something.
The videos were fine.
And actually, the videos I thought were pretty good by and large. It was completely unnecessary. You're inviting media scrutiny, and I get it, because this is what people on the right, they feel so gaslit over the media didn't cover the riots and the protesters and talk about coronavirus. I understand, but we covered it here. Some people did cover it fairly. And just because somebody tries to gaslight you on one thing doesn't mean you should ignore it in another purpose. Just because rioters and protesters out there are being hypocritical, and the media and the entire public health establishment, doesn't make coronavirus fake. Right? And if treating it fake on the other side isn't a justification. And people, by and large, can see people were concerned about coronavirus with the protesters and the rioters, and they're concerned about the coronavirus whenever it comes to Trump rallies. Actually trust Americans, because Americans feel, by and large, the president is not taking it seriously. They think the media has been hypocritical. They don't trust them for information. Like I said, I really understand where it all comes from, but that doesn't make it okay. You shouldn't have to put, even if there's a 2% chance, why? You don't have to do it. Stay in your hospital room, man.
Here's my thing with powerful people in general, and you and I have been around plenty of powerful people, and you see the way that they treat
underlings,
those that they think of as underlings, that they think of as having power over. And to me, this is always the measure of a person. You see a lot of powerful people who treat those individuals with respect and dignity and humanity and kindness. Then you see people like this who treat them like they don't matter and treat them like they don't care about their health and well-being and safety. And I find that more despicable than almost anything else. I think it says so much about a person. And so, look, of all the things that the president has done, there have been many that I've found unconscionable and outrageous. This one really, really bothered me at like a top level because of just the level of disregard that it showed for those individuals' safety.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary for the country. I think the country would be fine with the videos. I mean, it didn't add any benefit. Didn't even add anything to a re-election campaign, because most people still think he's taking it not seriously. So net negative, and you put people at risk. There's just no reason for it.
No reason for it. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.